I was adored by everyone at the base, living and eating alongside the most powerful mutants. Because of my healing powers, those I treated could even have an arm bitten off without any risk of infection. They hailed me as the savior of the apocalypse, but it seems, I might actually be a zombie. I opened my eyes among a group of zombies, my face wrinkling in distaste at the sight of their grotesque, misshapen forms. They were all so ugly. I touched my own face, thankfully. It was still smooth and tender. Suddenly, as if on cue, the zombies around me parted to create a path. My gaze followed, landing on a pale young boy sitting on a blood-stained leather sofa. He slowly opened his silver eyes, our gazes meeting for a moment. His silver pupils seemed distant yet fragile. He walked towards me and knelt before me, reverently lifting my foot and placing a gentle kiss on the top. "Welcome back, sister." The skin on my foot tingled from the kiss. But I resisted the urge to kick him away because he was rather good-looking. He stood up, his eyes trembling as he looked at me. "Please put this on first." He took a tray from another zombie nearby, on which lay a pure white dress. Without hesitation, I picked up the dress and slipped it over my head. As soon as I was dressed, a burst of gunfire sounded from nearby. The young zombie frowned and moved to shield me, while other smaller zombies rushed towards the source of the gunfire. The young zombie in front of me had red eyes and assumed a combat stance, but before he could make a move, something flew towards us and exploded into a thick white smoke before it even hit the ground. A warm hand grabbed my wrist and pulled me into an embrace. He slightly bent down to lift me by the knees and shot several ice blades towards the young zombie. It was all done in one fluid motion. "Hold on to me." I obediently wrapped my arms around his neck as he carried me swiftly away. The white fog was already dissipating, and I turned to look through the thinning mist at the young zombie. "Were you always this weak?" He froze mid-motion, bang, as if struck by some invisible force. His knees slammed heavily onto the ground, barely managing to stay on one knee. With the concrete around his knees visibly cracking, he stubbornly lifted his head, watching my retreating figure. "I will save you and bring you back. Please don't be disappointed because of my weakness." His words echoed in my mind. Oh, it seems we do understand each other. I wonder, did my earlier thoughts upset him? "Name? I don't remember. Why were you alone with so many zombies?" I frowned deeply. I couldn't answer that question. In fact, I couldn't answer any questions. I pointed to a man sitting by the fire, resting with his eyes closed. "He got hurt trying to get me out. I should heal him first." I shifted the conversation to the man, realizing he seemed to be the leader of this group, the one everyone else follows and respects. The person interrogating me with a notebook looked surprised. "You have healing powers." His voice was quite loud, drawing the attention of others, including their leader, who now opened his eyes to scrutinize me. His gaze was wary, as cold as frost. I thought to myself, it's strange how the body that held me so warmly during the day could now look at me with such icy cold eyes. Humans are really strange. I don't know what a healing power is exactly, but I felt a force within me that instinctively wanted to heal wounds. It must be similar to what they call healing powers. So, I nodded. Others still hesitated, seemingly fearful of harming their leader. "Let her give it a try." "Yes." Their response was crisp and decisive, showing none of their earlier hesitation. So obedient, like a puppy. I paused. A puppy? What? Why such a strange metaphor popped into my mind? I couldn't tell. Before I could think further, I was led before him. He took off his shirt, turned his back to me, revealing a shoulder wounded by shattered stones. The sight was gruesome, yet I felt no fear or empathy, only a trembling heart filled with extreme excitement. I gently placed my hand on the wound, feeling the warmth of his flesh. The man grunted. "Do you even know how to heal? Who just sticks their hand into a wound? Isn't healing ability supposed to work from a distance? Captain, are you all right?" Their voices buzzed around. But I was too busy reading the translucent text that appeared in my mind. All of Ryan's experiences were displayed before me in text form. Ryan frowned, his forehead slick with sweat, though I read eagerly, like someone thirsting for knowledge. It was, after all, a life story of 23 years, vast and detailed. Oh, I had forgotten my hand was still in his wound. I lifted my hand, and the already dire wound looked even more grievous. His teammates couldn't stand it anymore. "Is this healing?" It's getting worse. The captain has never shown such pain before. It hurts just looking at it. You did that on purpose. A female teammate reached out to grab my wrist, but her hand stopped mid-air, unable to complete the motion. She was too shocked by the sight before her. The large wound slowly healed, the blood and flesh merging as if alive. 5 minutes later, there was no trace of injury on the shoulder. Even old scars had vanished cleanly. It was as if a new layer of skin had grown. What the heck? Is there even such a branch in healing abilities? I thought healers were supposed to make wounds scab over to heal them. She's too powerful. Even the old scars are gone. Ryan turned around to face me, the coldness in his beautiful eyes softened, as if warmed by his body. Thank you. It was nothing. I looked at the teammate who had initially questioned me. The injury is healed. Let's continue. With that, I walked out of the crowd and sat back in my original spot. Indifferent to Ryan's gaze that lingered on me, using Ryan's memories, I responded fluently, "My name is Nora. I ended up here because everyone else in my team died, leaving me alone. I'm from Base C. As for why I'm wearing this impractical long dress for combat, because I like it." I looked at the teammate who was hurriedly taking notes. Any more questions? No, that's all. Late at night, the female teammate who had tried to grab my wrist quietly asked their captain. "Do you believe what she said?" Ryan lowered his eyelids, masking the fervent emotion in his eyes, his voice still cool and distant. "I believe her, but," Ryan cut her off, "with her abilities, we are at no loss." Yes, the female teammate left the tent. In a narrow and dim space, Ryan was alone, gently touching his healed shoulder while repeatedly murmuring a name, "Nora." I wasn't idle late at night either, taking advantage of when most people were asleep and slipping past the night watch. I left the camp. Not far from the camp, I caught a low-level zombie that could only babble incoherently. It looked about 17 or 18, with a 30-centimeter slash wound from its neck to its waist, deep enough that the viscera were nearly exposed. I was a bit disgusted, but I reached out and made a gesture in the air. The wound began to slowly heal. Not just that one, but other minor injuries began to heal as well. He seems a bit more handsome now. Once he was fully healed, he knelt before me. "Thank you, Saint, for your grace." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, he can speak now. How do you feel? Any changes? Tell me everything. I've evolved from a lower rank to a higher rank." And his head bowed very low. "I want to hug you, kiss you. Tear your clothes apart." "That won't do. This is my only dress. Do something for me. Go find my brother and tell him not to rush to rescue me. I'll go play at the human base for a couple of days, and I'll come back when I'm bored." Yes, the young zombie quickly left. Watching his departing figure, I guiltily touched my nose. It seems I guessed right. Those healed by me develop a dependency and even a romantic fixation, thinking only of love, a complete waste of thoughts. Sorry. Little zombie, you became the first love-struck zombie. Wait, did I also treat a human today? I was sitting in the car, staring thoughtfully at the towering walls in front of me. "What are you thinking about?" Ryan, sitting beside me, asked. "Nothing much." Ryan pursed his lips and fell silent again. Ryan's not only high-ranking in our team but seems to hold a superior position throughout the entire base. At the gate, the guards just glanced at the license plate and approached with smiles. Ryan's back. Was the mission successful? It's your shift at the gate today. How could it not go smoothly with Ryan? The driver chatted briefly with the guard, while Ryan, the main topic of their conversation, didn't even spare them a glance. I crossed my legs, rested my chin on my wrist, and, slightly turning, watched Ryan's face with interest. He pretended to be calm, eyes fixed straight ahead, seemingly unaware of my gaze. But I was sure he knew I was watching him. His Adam's apple visibly bobbing nervously. Finding it increasingly amusing, I decided to tease him. "Ryan, don't you feel me watching you?" Only then did he turn his head, his face still wearing that distant, aloof expression. "What is it?" "Nothing." His lips pressed tighter, and he turned his head back, though his expression remained unchanged and his movements minimal. I sensed he was annoyed. Haha, how amusing. I had read his memories. The reason Captain Ryan, always so stoic and sparing with words, hardly spoke was simply because he didn't know how to continue the conversation. His vocabulary was so limited it almost made me pity him, especially when the conversation ended with nothing much. Leaving him to start a topic was harder for him than asking for his life. After parking the car in the garage, the deputy captain arranged for everyone else to rest. Before long, it was just Ryan and me left. I'll take you to register, it's nothing. Cough, okay. I covered my lips and coughed lightly, trying not to irritate him. I naturally took his hand. His warmth traveled from our intertwined fingertips to me, and I relaxed comfortably, satisfied with the higher temperature of humans, bending my brows and eyes contentedly. Ignoring his obviously stunned expression, I gently tugged his hand. Let's go. The walk from the garage to the registration office was quite long, crossing nearly half of the base. Along the way, we encountered many people who invariably showed shock at our clasped hands, then exchanged glances with each other, their faces turning red. I glanced at Ryan's ears. Not red, Captain, what brings you here? The person in charge of registration spoke respectfully and seriously, though his eyes inadvertently glanced at our hands. She's a superpowered individual from Base C who I encountered outside yesterday. She hopes to stay here, please record that. What followed was a back and forth between the registrar and me about my basic information. Captain, according to the base rules, she needs to go through an observation period before she can enter the base. During this time, she can stay in a tent built around the base. After the observation period, she needs to be checked to ensure she is not infected with any virus. Ryan frowned, clearly unaware of these regulations beforehand. I was the first person he had brought back and dealt with personally. What if I stay with Captain Ryan? Having such a powerful superpowered individual supervise me would be safer, right? I guessed Ryan must have been thrilled. After all, I am his source of desire, and he surely must be crazy about me by now. He showed no emotion, looked down for a long while, and when he spoke again, his voice was slightly hoarse. Is that possible? This time, the registrar was completely stunned, stammering. Yes, it's possible. On the way back, I suddenly became curious. Logically, since I had thrown myself at him, he should have agreed immediately. Fearing I might change my mind, why the hesitation? Well, I admit, I do have a bit of a control issue over things that are mine, those I've healed. They belong to me, using the contact of our skin. I read his memories again. After reading, I had a complex expression. I hadn't expected Captain Ryan, who looked so clean and upright, to have such impure thoughts. He had imagined so many scenarios of me moving into his house in such a short time. It made my face flush. I felt secretly relieved that what I saw was text and not images. Seeing my troubled expression, he instinctively asked, "What's wrong?" His words halted, and he turned his head back. It seems that he needs to change this habitual phrase, he thought to himself. But I hadn't recovered from the shock yet, missing an opportunity to tease him. Ryan's house was not big. With a high population and limited space in the base, even highly positioned superpowered individuals didn't have large houses. Ryan's place was a simple one-bedroom, but it was neatly decorated, making it appear not too small. There's only one bedroom, you sleep in the bedroom, and I'll make do in the living room. Oh, I had originally planned to find some excuse to sleep with him at night, but now I was a bit concerned for my personal safety. At night, alone in bed, tossing and turning. The warmth from the hot shower I had taken earlier had long since dissipated. Alone in the cold night. Ah, how annoying. In the morning, as soon as I opened my eyes, Ryan, as if sensing it, knocked on the door. "Come in, I'm already up." I sat up, yawning and trying to fix my unruly hair. I was wearing Ryan's slightly long shirt. "These are the new clothes Autumn just brought over for me. I still have training later. So here's my meal card. I'll take you to the cafeteria first," he said, avoiding eye contact and nervously handing me a sizable paper bag. Okay, I responded, shifting to sit on the edge of the bed, my legs dangling over the side. "Could you help me put on my socks? I don't feel like bending over," I requested. Ryan stood still, neither approaching nor leaving. I raised an eyebrow at him, challenging. "What, you don't want to?" I could hear his breathing deepen and slow down. He pulled out a pair of cotton white socks from the bag and knelt in front of me, his head bowed slightly, his long bangs hiding his deep eyes. I smirked, satisfied. placing my foot in his palm. The unexpected heat made me instinctively pull back, but he quickly grabbed my ankle and delicately, slowly slipped the sock on. I felt my cheeks redden. Even though I was the one who had made the request, fortunately, it seemed he was very accommodating to my demands, making it very likely he'd agree to share a bed tonight. You can go now, I'm going to change, don't wait for me, go to your training, I'll eat on my own, I said once I was ready. Ryan softly grunted in acknowledgement. When I was ready to leave, I found him still there. We walked to the cafeteria in awkward silence, him not far from my side, just before we reached the entrance. He suddenly placed his hand on my head. Be good, I frowned, ducking to avoid his touch, and walked away without looking back, while Ryan watched me leave, curling his fingers. At the cafeteria, I sat down feeling somewhat despondent, overhearing the loud whispers around me. Isn't she the one the captain brought back yesterday, and she moved into his house? Yes, that's her. My cousin's son's friend got a picture of her. Hey, she's really pretty. You seldom see such delicate beauties after the apocalypse, commented a middle-aged man, immediately receiving friendly greetings from the women around him. After arriving at the base, I felt somewhat disappointed. Ryan's memories of the pre-apocalyptic prosperity had filled me with longing, but 3 years of apocalyptic crisis had worn people down to dullness. It seemed humanity wasn't as vibrant as their memories, so, I thought, I might as well heal more people and explore the precious memories hidden deep within their minds. Wiping my mouth with a napkin, I left the cafeteria. My ability is healing, and it's quite powerful. Let me work here, I proposed to the nurse leading the way. Where are we heading now? I asked. I'll take you to test your ability now. It's simple, just heal a wounded rabbit, she said. I was led to a room with 3 or 4 doctors. Show us your ability, one of them prompted. I glanced around the empty room, no rabbit in sight. I was secretly disappointed. I had never seen a rabbit before. Ryan had one as a child, soft and white, but his mother ended up killing it. Sensing my confusion, an older doctor at the head of the room slowly spoke up. Injure yourself with this dagger, then heal it. I caught the dagger thrown to me. His eyes narrowed dangerously. Scratch himself. I sneered coldly and moved swiftly forward, leaving a blur in the air. My hand, clutching the dagger, raised high only to change direction at the last moment. I scratched the arm of the young doctor beside me. Respecting the old and loving the young, I really am a good zombie. The young doctor. I casually tossed the blood-stained dagger aside and inserted my fingers into the gaping wound. Indeed, blood is the warmest thing in humans, a warm stream flowing from my fingertips. The familiar tingling sensation in my heart arose. The young doctor screamed louder in pain, so noisy, Ryan didn't make a sound before. I withdrew my blood-soaked hand and healed his wound. Not a trace was left on his arm. The 3 faces displayed identical shock and disbelief. The older doctor even excitedly slammed the table and stood up. Can I start the job now? Of course. Please forgive our earlier rudeness. The old doctor stroked his chin, relieved. Truly a formidable younger generation. I heard from the nurse that the test was to heal a rabbit. Why is it different with me? Are you targeting me? The old doctor didn't expect my direct question and awkwardly avoided my gaze, just about to divert the topic when a crisp sound came from beside him. Today we didn't prepare a wounded rabbit, we just thought to dampen your spirits a bit, since Base C has snatched many resources from us recently. The young doctor I had healed was slapping himself while crying bitterly and confessing the truth. I really deserve to die, old doctor. Why aren't you this honest normally? I see. I pondered for a moment. No need to die, just make amends by giving me a rabbit. As I left the hospital, I carefully cradled a small white bundle in my hands, letting out a deep, satisfied sigh. So small, so soft, so white, it nestled in my palm, and I could even feel its faint, trembling heartbeat. On my way home, I couldn't help but feel delighted. I really like it. Then, I spent the entire afternoon with this little creature. Ryan came back from training in the evening, his eyebrows even frosted over from frequent use of his ice powers. He turned the key and opened the door, the warm light from the gap instantly softening his expression. He gently pushed the door open, and the scene before him flowed warmly into his heart. A beautiful girl wrapped in a blanket was sleeping on the sofa. her black hair naturally falling and making her skin appear even more fair. In front of her, a mischievous little rabbit with bright red eyes was licking her chin with its pink tongue. Ryan chuckled softly, the frost melting, his beautiful eyes misting slightly, reflecting a fragmented and blurry light. He approached quietly, shifted the rabbit aside, which kicked its legs in displeasure. Ryan ignored it. Bent down to pick me up. No matter how gently he moved, he still woke me up, but I didn't open my eyes and subtly snuggled closer into his embrace, much more comfortable. He carried me into the bedroom and laid me on the bed, preparing to leave. I lifted my hand to hook around his neck, pulling him down close, his hot breath on my cheek. I was indeed tired and didn't bother with excuses. Stay with me, or I'll find someone else. My eyes remained closed, and I didn't see the panic and restraint in his eyes. After a moment of silence, the rustling sound of washing reached my ears. Once the sound of water stopped, I was embraced by a cool, minty hug. I shifted slightly to find the most comfortable position. The person holding me stiffened for a moment, then whispered in my ear with a breathy voice, "Don't move, I've been thriving at the human base, having treated nearly everyone who got injured on missions over the past month. I accessed their vivid and distinct memories. In my spare time, I amused myself with the rabbits, with Ryan, or by reading books at the bookstore." The forum at the base called Survivors had changed its tone about me from, "She's just using her good looks to seduce my crush. The captain will get tired of her in no more than 2 days and kick her out. None of those at base C are good, they're using a beauty trap on us. How does she deserve to live with my crush?" 2. The goddess is off today, no point in going to the hospital to wait. Crying, "Why does Ryan keep sticking to my wife? Keep your distance." Holding hands and hugging in public. "Shameless, dear, look at me, I've cut my hand again." Flirty, "The guy above is a creep, I can tell you cut yourself on purpose." However, there were times when things didn't go smoothly, like the cafeteria lady's hands always trembling. I rested my chin on my hands, staring straight at the auntie who was chopping vegetables. She shivered. "Turn away, you're giving me the chills." I stretched lazily. "Auntie Chiu, you're about to cut yourself, let me heal you." I was quite calculating in my approach. If she got hurt and I treated her, she might fall for me and serve me food without trembling hands. A tiny victorious figure appeared in my mind. Auntie Chiu scolded with a laugh. "You cheeky girl. Are you cursing me? Go away, don't watch me chop vegetables. Take the day off and go play with your boyfriend." Once again, my plan failed, and I slumped on the table, dejected, mumbling, "I'm dying, eating more meat is the only cure." I drew out the last word. Auntie Chiu couldn't help but burst out laughing, purposely teasing me. "Get lost, even if you really died, I wouldn't give you any meat." Seeing little hope, I decided to retreat temporarily and shift my target. I visited a small bookstore on the street corner. Tiny but with every book neatly arranged. I loved reading and also had a fondness for the bookstore owner, a clever man. Sean, the man, who was arranging the shelves, turned around with a smile. "What book would you like to borrow today? I've read all the books here." In this post-apocalyptic world, resources were scarce, with missions often resulting in casualties, hence priority was given to food and essential supplies. The collection of books was Sean's effort. Having asked someone to bring them back, "Yeah, there are no new books here, and yet you still come to see me." "I came to check if you were injured," I said earnestly. Sean had a photographic memory, widely read before the apocalypse. I had long wanted to access his memories, but unfortunately, Sean rarely went on missions and hardly ever got injured. Sean smiled helplessly. "I'm not that fragile." Feeling deflated, I spent the remaining time curled up in the bookstore, reading a book I loved and had read many times. Sean sat at the desk taking notes, then seemingly casually looked up at me. He began slowly, "Did you know Ryan before? We just met a month ago." I replied absent-mindedly, engrossed in my book. He paused slightly, with a light chuckle. She lowered her head and continued to transcribe, the tip of her pen making a faint friction sound against the paper. "So, your relationship has really developed quickly," someone remarked. I frowned slightly, unsure of what he meant by that. "Aren't you two dating?" "No." He paused, surprised. "Then you guys often hold hands and hug." Sean tacitly acknowledged this. I just think his body is very warm. After I confirmed that I was not dating Ryan, Sean seemed noticeably more relaxed. Did he feel relieved because I didn't like Ryan? I was surprised. I hadn't even treated him yet. How could he have developed feelings for me so quickly? Could it be that my abilities were enhancing? He's an ice-powered individual. How could his body be warm? Since awakening his abilities, his body temperature has been lower than that of ordinary people. He looked at me, joking naturally. My body temperature might be higher than his. Want to try? I thought about it seriously for a second. Okay. I stood up and walked straight to Sean, who seemed frozen, lacking his usual ease, and looked like a puppet on strings as I moved him around. He stood up as soon as I pulled his hand. I took the opportunity to wrap my arms around his waist, feeling it carefully, making a fair assessment. Indeed, he's a bit warmer than Ryan. I found this warmth addictive, and since I had found a warm toy, of course I wanted to hold him a bit longer, though his body felt a bit stiff, making it somewhat uncomfortable to embrace. As I was indulging in this tender moment, a familiar, cool voice rang in my ears. Nora, training is over. I'm here to take you home. My voice was muffled as my face was buried in Sean's chest. Oh, reluctantly, I let go and waved at Sean. As I was about to leave, I suddenly remembered something and turned back to Sean with a serious expression. Thank you for letting me experience something different. I noticed that Ryan next to me was radiating a cold aura, his powers barely contained. But what did that matter to me? He wasn't special to me anymore. That night, as I lay in Ryan's arms, all I could think about was Sean. How could I live with Sean? I pondered seriously. While this behavior might be deemed fickle in the human world, it made me very happy. I would be fair to everyone. If someone better than Sean came along, I would not hesitate to leave him behind. Recently, two individuals I was reluctant to see had arrived at the base. A young man, only 18 but with a level 8 ability, was escorting a stoic-looking zombie king to the base. Seeing the zombie king, who looked almost human except for his skin color, a tense atmosphere enveloped the base. They hadn't anticipated that zombies could evolve to this extent. The resemblance to humans was enough to induce an uncanny valley effect. The two were detained in a tent outside the base. In the deep night, the base was silent. I moved agilely, avoiding the patrolling guards, and slipped into the tent. Sister, you're here. The young man's eyes were bright and his smile showed his white teeth, full of vigor. I frowned slightly, not recognizing the young man before me. Shut up, she's my sister. I looked at the one who spoke, my face cold as I asked, why are you here? Didn't I say you don't need to worry about me, and that you don't have to listen to me? You said you'd play at the human base for a couple of days. But now, his voice trailed off under my emotionless gaze. He blinked, swallowing the bitterness, his hoarse voice trembling slightly. I just missed you. My expression relaxed and I raised an eyebrow with a smile. Only honest kids are adorable. The human boy who had been neglected by me looked at me with puppy eyes, looking wronged. Does sister not remember me? The person in front of me gradually overlapped with the blurry figure from my memories, who used the same expression back then when he said he wanted to tear my clothes. I remember, you're the little zombie I treated, as if clearing away clouds to see the sunlight. The boy beamed brightly. Yes, after your treatment, I evolved into an intelligent high-level zombie. I thought that would be the end, but I kept evolving. Now, I've turned back into a human and even gained special abilities. As he spoke, he lifted his hand to demonstrate his ability, and a tiny flower grew from his fingertips, in a fleeting moment. The white bud unfolded into tender, fragile petals. The boy blushed. For you, seeing that I didn't refuse, he boldly pinned the flower by my ear. If you two want to stay here, don't cause any trouble. When I get tired of human life, I'll come find you. After saying that, I walked out of the tent, blending agilely into the night. I slipped back into Ryan's arms as quietly as possible. What I didn't know was that after I fell asleep, the delicate flower forgotten at my temple instantly froze stiff, shattered into fine pieces, and dissolved into mist in the air. He gently kissed my earlobe, his eyes cold and frantic. Who is it this time? I casually sat in the base leader's office, without a trace of nervousness or fear. I even found it somewhat amusing. Since my arrival at the base over a month ago, the number of infected near the base had been almost zero. even though people noticed, they tacitly never mentioned it. Instead, their looks towards me grew increasingly grateful and reverent, but the leader was no fool. Miss Nora, let's collaborate, I scoffed. Your idea of collaboration is to use me as an experiment. He shrugged, feigning innocence. Miss, it's merely cooperation in research. Don't you want the world to return to normal? The zombies are evolving daily. Look at the zombie king now being monitored outside the base. He's almost no different from humans, even smarter and stronger. The captain goes out on missions in this environment every day. His presumptuous demeanor was laughable to me. You might be mistaken about something. Ryan is no different to me than anyone else. His smile could no longer hold on his face. It froze, and a harsh, resolute cold light flickered in his eyes. My smile grew even brighter as I walked towards the open balcony. You don't think a locked door can keep me in, do you? However, my tone shifted. I was already sitting on the ornately carved marble railing of the balcony, the cool autumn wind curling my long hair. I agreed to cooperate. I leapt from the high balcony, landing steadily on the ground. I lay on the hospital bed, looking at my arm full of needle marks with some regret. The feeling of blood being drawn from my veins was quite fascinating, though a bit painful. Looking at the man next to me dressed in a white coat, his face masked and eyes downcast in silence. Sean, be gentle today as well. He remained silent. Okay, it turned out Sean had a deeper role. He was originally a doctor researching vaccines at the base, but his long-term lack of progress and huge resource consumption led the leader to halt his research. Now, to resume the experiment for me, I was essentially helping Sean get re-employed. After days of continuous blood draws, my lips turned pale, and my fair skin was nearly transparent. I don't remember how much longer I stayed in the lab. I just remember Ryan came looking for me. His eyes were terrifyingly red, redder than the eyes of the rabbit we raised together. That day you talked, I was hiding in the shadows. Kevin wanted to see how I would choose. He wanted to know if I would betray the entire base for you. Should I give up on you to save humanity? I closed my eyes, feeling completely drained. My heart felt unusually uncomfortable. Probably a side effect of the experiments, I thought. It seems our great hero has chosen to abandon me in order to save humanity. I kept my eyelids lowered, not looking at him. No, his voice choked up, as if he was suppressing overwhelming emotions that even he couldn't control. I choose to listen to you. I was slightly startled and then, with a light chuckle, I forcefully lifted my hand, and he obediently bowed his head. Good boy, catching him off guard. I used all my strength to hook his neck and pull him down, my cold, pale lips pressed against the corner of his mouth. Good children get rewards. Not long after persuading Ryan to leave, a deafening noise erupted from outside the door. Sean, let me in. What exactly happened to Nora? I'm here on behalf of the entire base. If you don't let me in, everyone from the base is going to force their way through. It seemed to be Auntie Chiu from the cafeteria. Sean and the other researchers dared not stop her forcefully, fearing they might hurt her. Thus, it didn't take long for Auntie Chiu to slip in. Nora, Auntie has come to see you. Her words were choked in her throat, her shoulders trembling, tears streaming down her wrinkled face. I joked, don't cry, Auntie Chiu. Crying makes you look older. Now I'm really going to die. Can you stop trembling and give me a bit more meat to eat? You come with Auntie. Go out. I'll give you all the meat. All for me. Then what will the kids at the street corner eat? Auntie Chiu was famously shaky-handed, but no one in the base blamed her because they all knew that the food she dropped was the daily meal for those impoverished children. Auntie Chiu wanted to say more, but I stopped her. I'm really tired. I need to rest. After Auntie Chiu left, I called Sean back in. I really didn't have any energy left, already weak, having seen so many people and divided so much attention today. I asked quietly in a straightforward manner, is the experiment close to success? Yes, do you remember the zombie king who is still locked outside the base? Once the experiment succeeds, turn him back into a human before telling him about my death. I smiled lightly, my eyes curving. Otherwise, I'm afraid he'll go mad and tear down the base. Sean's voice was hoarse. Did you know him? He's my brother. I feel like I'm about to die. I faintly sensed that I was the harbinger of the apocalypse, the world's first zombie The young man standing before me had eyes that emitted a red glow, readying himself for battle. It's more like a divine trial, a reprimand from heaven. At first, I thought I might be human because I had the same skin color, the same red blood, and even a heartbeat. Perhaps I was just someone with extraordinary abilities, but I wasn't. My robust physical condition, overly sensitive and agile body, lack of empathy, and my non-regenerative blood all reminded me that I was a cold, terrifying monster. Yet, even monsters want to do something for the people they care about and who care about them, and so, she bled dry her last drop of blood, and the people she pitied would walk towards a bright and splendid future, stepping over her bloodstains. Side story, Ryan, to me, the apocalypse was no different from any other time. Some people hate the apocalypse because it destroyed the bright futures they were supposed to have, futures they enjoyed before the catastrophe, before the apocalypse. My life was already bleak. That changed when I met her. Her treatment was like a blade of light slicing through the gloom, clearing the hatred from my soul and reviving the rare splendid moments of my childhood. The twisted face of my mother as she strangled a rabbit was replaced by the gentle smile that welcomed me home for meals in my early years. The heavy fists of my father that fell on me and my mother were replaced by the broad, warm back of my childhood. She awakened in me a longing for beauty, a desire to live. I know she accessed my memories, but what she didn't know was that as her first treatment subject, I could also read her thoughts. So, you fool, you guessed wrong. It's not that those who you've treated are forced to fall in love with you, but rather, those treated by you are awakened to their innate goodness, irresistibly drawn to you, and then fall in love with you, just like me.